Well, I'm joined today by Deborah McMillan, who's the Children's Commissioner in Jersey, and joining us here because we've got this interesting situation that there's going to be much more pan-island sort of exchanging of information, maybe positions as well. And I know, Deborah, you've been in talks with Guernsey already, although that's not yet fully happened, but there's a potential that you might do more children's champion here in the Isle of Man, even though we do have our own MHK that's doing that at the minute. So maybe I thought this would be a good idea if you explain the ideas, the concepts of what could happen between here, Jersey and Guernsey, and maybe further afield.
I think, first of all, just to say thank you for this opportunity, and I'm really welcome the chance to speak to government officials to talk about my role, because I'm just super passionate about it. Because having a children's commissioner is really important for all of our children. You know, I'm responsible for every single child on our island, and that's important. And for some older teens as well, my remit goes up to the age of 24, for example, for children who've ever been in care. So what does a children's commissioner do? Well, what I do is make sure that I promote and protect the rights of those children. It's not just about safeguarding and child protection. It's about their housing. It's about their education. It's about their parents' access to income support. It's about their access to play and leisure. So it's every single aspect of children's life. And my role is to make sure every single child has a wonderful childhood on our island.
There's been criticism here that the remit was too sort of narrow. In fact, Daphne Kane resigned over that. It wasn't big enough. You've got some big powers. You've got quite a lot of control that you can insert to make sure things are done right. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, for Jersey, I'm the only statutory role on the island for children. Even the minister only has statutory responsibilities for a small group of children who are looked after. And that's really important. Now, the statutory powers are there should I need to use them. But mostly I work collaboratively with government departments to make sure that when they're writing new laws and drafting new ways of working, that they think about children and their families from the outset, so that they don't make decisions that are, have negative impact on children. For example, maybe any changes to income support or taxation.
Now, there's been obviously a well-documented situation of abuse in Jersey, and the Isle of Man's had its cases as well. Is that the sort of thing also you get involved in and could oversee future ways that this could be dealt with in front of the courts, for instance?
So the Independent Jersey Care Inquiry was very clear about its findings, and that the government have apologised for that. And the very first action from the inquiry was to appoint me as the commissioner. And I came with a mandate to write the legislation that underpins my role. So the Commissioner for Children and Young People Jersey law was passed in 2019. And it does give me the mandate to make sure that the adequacy and effectiveness of services provided for children and their families is good enough. So there's an element of a check and challenge for the government, but also my role is helping the government and the community recover from that really challenging time, where we're not putting the past behind us, but we're making sure that it's not repeated again in the future.
So where does this idea of working with the different islands, would that mean that you could potentially be overseeing things here in the Isle of Man? Because I know the islands, they don't always want to work together, but it sounds logical to have somebody that's sort of overseeing everything almost.
One of the benefits of having one person is that it truly makes the role independent. Because if you can imagine, working on one island can mean people might think that you get too familiar with government officials or with ministers, and therefore the independence of the role is really important. So sharing the role would help with that. But also in terms of the cost and managing that, is if it was shared, it would be a lot cheaper across several islands as well. But it also shows a real commitment. There's children's commissioners in most countries around the world, and so it is an excellent way of saying to our families, we value children and we value childhood and we want to do our very best.
And away from that abuse situation, we call it a children's champion over here. It's the same sort of thing, but just giving people of 18 and under, in most circumstances, that voice that they probably haven't got at the minute.
Yes, when I first arrived, I carried out a survey, an island-wide survey, and heard from children and young people. And only 20-odd% of them knew that they had rights. Now that's up to 77%, which is great, because when children learn about rights, they learn about respect and responsibility. And for those of our schools that are engaged in our Rights Respecting Schools programme, we're seeing an increase in standards and outcomes for children, less bullying, less children being excluded. So it's having a dramatic impact already.
And anyone watching this, or young persons watching, what's the best route to go? I mean, obviously you've got your situation in Jersey. I mean, there's obviously Childline and all those other places they can go. Is there a go-to place you'd recommend?
So if children want general information on their rights, there are a number of places that they can go. There is my website, which has lots of child-friendly literature and content, some animations for younger children, for example. So please do go and have a look at that. But also England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland all have websites for their own commissioners as well, where you can find out far more information about what are your rights and how do governments make sure that those rights are protected.
And finally, do you think it would happen that you could get, I mean, you're talking about the overseas territories as well, aren't you? Potentially taking some interest in there as well. So do you think this could happen?
I'm really excited that governments around the world are seeing the value of having a commissioner dedicated for children. I'm part of a network of 42 children's commissioners in Europe, and it's wonderful to see such commitment. And I'd be happy to help the Isle of Man, as in any island, to promote this.